Hello and welcome. Today we have a very special guest with us, Rakashi Chand, who serves as the librarian at the Mass Historical Society. Rakashi is a member of one of the first Indian American families in the Boston area. She is a member of the Khetrapal family, and she was born and raised in New England itself. Later, she ended up, training herself as a librarian and joining the Mass Historical Society as a librarian. There, she has had some very special experiences where she has encountered very special writings from Indian Americans. And to talk about that, Rakashi will be joining us today. Namaste, Rakashi. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's truly a pleasure.
Fantastic, Rakashi. Yeah. First of all, Mass Historical Society, I didn't know what they do. And so two questions. What does the Historical Society do? And what do librarians do? I don't know either one of them. So could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So the Massachusetts Historical Society is the oldest historical society in America and possibly in the entire Western Hemisphere, the North and South America. We were founded in 1791 by Jeremy Belknap and a few of his friends that helped found the society. And this gave the Historical Society, as it was known at the time, it was not called the Massachusetts Historical Society, it was called the Historical Society because there were no others. So this gave the Historical Society the incredible advantage of being able to collect everything and anything. And since nobody was doing anything similar at the time, Jeremy Belknap realized that the revolution had just come and gone, and it was time to start gathering all these pieces of history that led to the creation of the new nation. But they also had the opportunity to collect things that people had brought over from Europe and through families. So the wealth that is reflected here is not just Massachusetts. We have collections that represent the entire country and even across the globe.
Wow, that's most interesting. And what motivated you to become a librarian, and what do librarians do at the Massachusetts Society?
So the Massachusetts Historical Society is unique in that it's a manuscript repository and archive. We're a research library. So as opposed to the public library that you go to browse through books, we have primary sources, manuscripts mostly. So when someone comes to do research here, it's a very different process and a very different feeling than it would be to just go to a regular local library. We actually do have a registration process, and we check your ID, because what we're about to hand you at your desk is a unique historic document. It's something that cannot be replaced and is needed for generations of historians and researchers from this time forward. Yeah. So it's making those materials accessible to the public. That's what we do at the Massachusetts Historical Society. Coming here is a wonderful, wonderful experience where I would invite everyone to come. We are operating on an appointment-based system right now because of COVID. So we have to limit the number of researchers that we have in the library on any given day, just to make sure that everyone is safe. And but we are open to the public. So we do welcome people. We're a private library as opposed to a public library. The Historical Society has always done its own fundraising. So it's actually not a state agency. Many people think that we are, but we are not. And it's a different type of library experience. I'm one of a member of the reference staff. So if you do come in, we begin you with a reference orientation and interviews. Sort of, if you're coming in to do research, we'll say, okay, let's find out what resources you can use here at the Historical Society. We show you how to search our catalog, how to request material, and then how to handle the material. Because when you're dealing with historical documents, There are certain procedures that we use here to ensure that the manuscripts will continue to serve research for years to come. So it's a very different experience than most libraries.
Fantastic.
But it's a wonderful place to come and do research, and everyone's welcome.
Sure, that sounds great. I mean, I don't think many people know about it. And for the Indian American community, I mean, I just found out from you that you have a very special collection that you chanced upon recently, and you've been transcribing it. So could you tell us about that?
Absolutely. So we have researchers ask questions from across the globe, and I was actually working on a different reference question from the Virginia Woolf Society in England, and they were saying, well, we think that you have some unpublished letters in the Ellery Cedric Papers, which is a collection that we have here at the Historical Society. As I began looking through it, I came across the name of Tagore, and I said, oh my goodness, we have letters from Tagore here in Massachusetts at the Massachusetts Historical Society. And it was an incredible moment where I said, oh, this is, I mean, for me, and I think many others, this is always someone that I've always studied and idolized, and in so many different ways. It's the literary figure of India. And it's such a supreme hyphenate. He did everything to be talented in so many different ways. In a way that he contributed to the culture of modern India in across so many different fields. So it really was a moment of discovery.
I think
for me, and I think for everybody else as well.
No, I think that's fantastic. I mean, but Tagore's influence was not just limited, I think, to India and Indians. I mean, the very fact that he was communicating with people around the globe, I know that he has influenced their thought as well. And I know that when he won the Nobel Prize, it was a testament to that fact that he was not just a brilliant, literary person. Of course, that he was, no doubt, but his work had influenced way beyond the borders of Bengal, right? And
absolutely.
And the background that I have is a picture, an art that he has drawn.
Artist, and of course,
this is just one of the things he did. I mean, there were so many different fields that he has influenced. So I think you said that these letters were written around 1913. Who were they written to and were they written to somebody in Massachusetts? And
yes.
What was Tagore telling at that time in 1913? What was he thinking? This was a time when India was not even independent. So
exactly. And that was one of the reasons that he was actually traveling across the globe, was to find out about other cultures and countries and to share his own culture. And this was something where he spoke of nationalism, and he spoke of so many other things, and he really wanted to get a sense of what was happening in other countries and how he could help his own country, who, India's fighting for independence at this point under colonial oppression. And he went out into the world, spent of the many trips that he made across the globe, he did come to America 3 times. So the letter that we have here, it's one of 5. And the one that I like the most is the one that he writes from Massachusetts. So he was here.
Wow.
About 100 years ago.
Which hotel? Where did he stay?
It was in Williamstown. And it was definitely, he was in a hotel, because the letterhead, I'm actually going to take the letters out of the box. So just to give you a background of how these manuscript boxes look when they come, I'm going to actually just show you the box. The box is actually right behind me, right over here. And so,
wow. And I guess that's what librarians do, very carefully go to the box.
Just bookmarking my place, because there are many other amazing authors. So this is the file that we have. We are not unique in that this is not the only Tagore material housed in Massachusetts. Harvard does have a collection that they acquired. And I believe that Wellesley also has a letter. But these are actual letters written to a person here. This was not something that was acquired at any point. It was letters, personal correspondence between Ellery Sedgwick and Tagore, and it was over a number of years. Ellery Sedgwick, just to give a little bit of example, was the editor of the Atlantic Monthly, which was the foremost literary magazine of the time, and he made it into an international literary magazine that was really amazing in the early 20th century. So he was friends with Tagore, and so they did write to each other over the years. And when Ellery Sedgwick's papers, when he gave the papers to the Historical Society, we ended up with this great collection of all these amazing literary figures. And unfortunately, because Tagore's name had not been put into our catalog, I didn't know until going through the box that the letters were here. So it was really great. So we're adding that to the catalog, of course.
Of course. That's excellent. And what's what's his mood like? What stood out to you from some of the letters?
Yes. So I'm going to just start. So the first letter, this one is earlier. This is December 12th. Yeah. We're in 1913, 1914, still 1914. Should actually show you the letters as I'm doing this. I'm going through the letters and just, I don't know if you can see my desk right now.
Yeah, we can see the desk, but not, but there are the letters. Oh my God, yes, I see them.
Okay. This one is actually, well, this of course is not handwritten. This is actually by his personal secretary. And these letters are talking about something that Tagore was writing for the Atlantic Monthly that was going to be published because it's a literary magazine. And he was speaking about the school in Bengal, and he wanted, Ellery Sedgwick was hoping that Tagore would write about the school. So that's correspondence going back and forth between the two of them. This one is actually from Tagore while he was visiting Japan, and he's writing to Ellery Sedgwick here in Boston.
Wow.
But actually, the letter that that I'm most fascinated by is this letter. And I'll actually just change the camera view just a bit so that I can show it to you really clear. So it's actually 1930. So the first letter in the collection is 1913, and this is the letter and as you can see from the letterhead, it is Williamstown, Massachusetts. So he was staying in a hotel in Williamstown, Massachusetts. It's October 12th, 1930. It's such a fascinating letter because this is Tagore when he's come on one of his trips to America. And he arrives in New York and is just inundated by the press. And it's the American press. And he reaches out to his friend, Ellery Sedgwick, and says, you need to give me some advice. How do I handle the American press? Because they literally just took everything that he was saying to them and twisted it around because he actually had a hard time with the American press when he came here. He was doing a series of lectures and speeches and did like a tour across the country. And people in the press where, he would say, stand up for what's right. And Americans were like, what do you mean? We are doing what's right. And he would question that, in what their involvement or lack of involvement in the war, nationalism, what it meant to be free, what it was to be a patriot. There were so many things that were being challenged at the time and so many different concepts that Tagore was bringing up that sometimes he wasn't portrayed very in such a nice way. So this was his battle that he was dealing with at the time. And it's amazing that Tagore was going across the globe and educating people about Indian culture. And if you think about it, he was the first person to win a Nobel Prize that was non-European, non-white. I mean, the first ever. So that in itself tells you he was out on a mission alone, and it must have it really must have been hard.
It's
So I'm
interesting
gonna
to see that the press even then was doing that. And
my favorite line in this letter, actually, and I'm going to read from the transcription.
Please do.
So what the transcription is just, I went through the letter and tried to make sure that I had captured every word. And then a colleague of mine also would go through the letter and check the wording to make sure that it is, because it's handwriting. We want to make sure that we've captured everything. And then a third check would happen where you would read the transcription and the letter side by side, and then someone would read it while I'm checking it to make sure that we've got it all.
Why do you transcribe it?
I'm sorry?
Why do you transcribe the letter?
Just because in some cases handwriting can be very hard to read. So it's some people, their handwriting is not as legible as others. Actually, Tagore is very easy to read, luckily, but there's always a word here or there that you might.
And also it's historical, so there might be things that have rubbed off and things like that here and there.
Yes. Yeah. Although I will say that my most favorite line in this letter is where he says, "I cannot ascribe this sudden epidemic of unintelligence among the American reporters, and my vanity forbids me to think that I failed to make my meaning clear, especially on points which would lead to mischievous vaguely expressed." He says, "I'm sorely puzzled." It's amazing that just the idea that I cannot ascribe this to a sudden epidemic of unintelligence among the American reporters. It was really, the way he writes is fabulous, and we understand that even now.
Twisting the words, right? Like, I mean, that's a very
oh gosh,
journalists all the time about that. You didn't say what I said. You took what you wanted out of it. And
yes, it's such a great letter. Rather than read the whole thing, it's just I would love to share that with the audience. There's one more sentence that I actually really enjoyed in this letter, and it's "I'm beginning to feel like a pedestrian from my country, trying to walk in his own absent-minded manner in some busy street in New York, and suddenly finding some necessary," excuse me, I'm just missing a word right over here, "portion of his limbs disappearing in the dust. I only wish I could laugh at my misadventure, but that would become impossible even for an Oriental philosopher, owing to its extremely mischievous nature, to have come to the conclusion that the only place which is safer for the Eastern simpleton is his own remote corner of obscurity.
Oh my God.
Waiting for some advice and consolation from you, I remain very sincerely yours, Rabindranath Tagore." And it's just wonderful. He's saying, "I'm a simple man, and I'm realizing that, you're lost in a whirlwind, going from place to place to place, and I can only imagine him ending up in New York." But
and I think it's amazing, right? Like, I mean, even now, so many of us vibe with this, trying to explain our culture to the mainstream Americans, even though now, of course, we are doing this as Americans, not even as people visiting from the Orient. And to see that the great Tagore, who knew, whose literary skills were really unmatched, also struggled.
It's so true. And for many Americans, this would have been, perhaps attending a lecture would have been the first time that they're seeing someone from India.
It's fantastic. Well, what a treasure trove you have unveiled for us, Rakashi. And so I guess people can actually, go to the Historical Society, make an appointment, and if you want to come and see the letters.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay. So definitely, I'm going to do that, Rakashi, for sure. I'd love to come and see those letters, so that'll be a great thing to do. I wanted to ask you, I mean, I know that there have been other, famous Indian who had visited, earlier, and Vivekananda is one of them for sure. I know that the Vedanta Society was started here. Do you have letters or anything else from?
We actually don't, but I know that there are some in Cambridge. So the Cambridge Historical might have some of those, but we are hoping to feature something in the coming month or two. We do have a letter by Raja Ram Mohan Roy.
Oh,
and so we are, which is something that's it's coming soon. We just finished transcribing it, so there's something, you know, and of course he was a preceptor for Tagore and his family, so it's very exciting. So that's going to be coming very soon as well.
Wow, the Brahmo Samaj and all of that. I mean, that's
yes,
it's me, you know, see what he was thinking at the time, you know, that is that's just spectacular. Well, Rakashi, this has been such a special thing to learn about for me, you know, because I just never knew that, you know, all our historical figures could actually be brought to life through their letters and all of that. And they're not just, you know, hidden somewhere, or, you know, sometimes you think of them as, were they really real? You know, could such a man have walked the earth, you know, and then you find out, no.
It's so true. And I think it's so meaningful for everybody, especially all the kids that are being raised here, you know, they're Indian American, and they feel like, well, you know, what is my connection? And to know that, you know, 100 years ago, Tagore was here and he was trying to educate Americans about India and Indian culture, it's so much more meaningful. But before we go, I do want to just share this wonderful card.
Yes.
And I don't know if you can see this. This is, of course,
the picture. We can put it up on the video. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And this was written, a card that was sent to Ellery Sedgwick by Tagore, and it's just, of course, it has his art as well. So
and what
it's really nice.
Just as a best wishes card, is it? Is that what it is, or a Christmas card, or what?
This is actually, I think this was an invitation for Founders Day to the school. So this is, and it says, my salutation is to him who knows me imperfect and loves me, Rabindranath Tagore.
My God, so beautiful. And you know, that school, Shanti Niketan, is a legend. Yes. And to see that he was founding it, you know, thinking about making the school, it's just incredible to know that there is, you know, those letters that was written at that time, you know, and there's a Founders Day, and it's just, I mean, those institutions have become such interesting and solid institutions, you know. So I think looking forward to seeing those letters, and certainly, you know, I look forward to coming there and doing it. So Rakashi, I know of too many people who take on library science as a major. Would you recommend that to people? Is it still, it seems like an exciting thing to do. So do you want to talk about that a little bit for us?
Sure, it is definitely an interesting thing to do. I came into this particular society because of my love of history, and so there's a wonderful connection working at a manuscript repository or an archive where you can actually use your knowledge of history and also serve the public and share this wonderful knowledge and all these wonderful resources by working in a place such as this one. But also public libraries have done so much more and gone above and beyond, especially during COVID. Librarians have been called upon to do everything from hand out COVID tests to just provide some safety and sanity for people to escape all the chaos and the anxiety from COVID. Library's always been a safe place, a sanctuary. So it's a very noble thing to do.
Yeah, a great public service to bring knowledge and information to the public. I think that is in a very beautiful way. And I think I think American libraries are certainly one of its great treasured institutions. And I think for you to be able to, you know, work in a historical society or a library, just, I'm sure every day you are getting spiritually enhanced, just surrounded by great works like that. So
it is fun.
But I can tell that. So Rakashi, thank you so much for reaching out and telling us about this wonderful story, and look forward to Raja Ram Mohan Roy's letter as well. God bless you. Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you.